through the ages. Will those who are able please rise to the gospel lesson? As the time approached for him to be taken up into heaven, Jesus resolutely set out for Jerusalem. And he sent messengers on ahead who went into a Samaritan village to get things ready for him. But the people there did not welcome him because he was heading for Jerusalem. When the disciples, James and John, saw this, they asked, "Lord, do you want us to call down fire from heaven to destroy their village?" And Jesus turned and rebuked them. And then he and his disciples went to another village. As they were walking along the road, a man said to him, "I will follow you wherever you go." Jesus replied, "Foxes have dens, birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head." He said to another man, "Follow me." But he replied, "Lord, first let me go and bury my father." And Jesus said to him, "Let the dead bury their own dead, but you go and proclaim the kingdom of God." Still another said, "I will follow you, Lord, but first let me go back and say goodbye to my family." Jesus replied, "No one who puts a hand to the plow and looks back is fit for service in the kingdom of God." Early on in my ministry, I learned the importance of titling your sermons carefully. A colleague preaching on this passage from Corinthians posted out on the signboard in front of his church his sermon title, "Love Slaves." Oh boy. And you can imagine the remarks he got. I don't know what he did for attendance, but he got a few remarks from members of his congregation. Paul sets up an intriguing premise in this passage. You've been set free. Free to become slaves to one another. Now, most of us have read about slavery. We've learned about it in our history classes. We've even seen it portrayed on TV and in the movies. But I don't think anybody in this room has ever actually been a slave. Or have we? Philip Brooks wrote that no man in this world attains freedom from any slavery except by entrance into some higher servitude. One of the invisible things that a slave loses is control over his or her own destiny. Over what am I going to do this morning? What am I going to eat? What am I going to wear? And it's a complete loss of human dignity. As Paul will argue later in this text, without slaves, we are slaves to the desires of the flesh. And it's those desires that will control us. We'll get to that in a minute. But first, I'm going to point out that this is one of those weeks when what the lectionary leaves out, what they don't include, is just about as important as the passage they actually do include. The lectionary skips a few verses, 2 to 12 basically, because, well, I guess maybe for some people it's a little bit embarrassing because it talks a lot about circumcision. And it seems somewhat superfluous. And it can even be embarrassing, I guess, for some people to speak about such things. But it does set off the reason behind Paul's argument and the urgency of it. Paul went into Galatians, and Paul founded that church. And then he left to go found other churches, which is what Paul did his whole life. And then they came in. See, church, the Galatians were a church of Gentiles. And these Jewish Christians came in and said, well, you can't really be a Christian if you don't become a completely Jewish first, because Christianity is Jewish in its nature. This would have meant that all the men would have had to be circumcised. The division of Christianity into cults and denominations and such is nothing new. And when Paul hears about this, he is furious. When I read this passage, I can almost hear him shouting and see the veins in his neck and his forehead standing out as he writes, listen! I, Paul, tell you that if you allow yourselves to be circumcised, it means that Christ is of no use to you at all. Once more I warn, any man who allows himself to be circumcised is obligated to obey the whole law. Those of you who try to put it right with God by obeying the laws have cut yourself off from Christ. You're outside of God's grace. The Jewish Christ, Paul says, calls us to a new life that doesn't require such things. This kind of example of legalism is exactly what Christ has freed us from. We're no longer subservient to laws that have become archaic and inapplicable. Heaven knows we've got a lot of those. In Kansas, the law states you cannot eat snakes on Sunday or rattlesnake meat in public. In Lexington, Kentucky, there's an ordinance forbidding anyone to carry an ice cream cone in his pocket. In Los Angeles, you cannot bathe two babies in the same tub at the same time. In Carmel, New York, a man can't go outside while wearing a jacket and pants that don't match. And of course, one of my favorites, from Nicholas County, West Virginia. No member of the clergy is allowed to tell jokes or humorous stories from the pulpit during a church service. Now you know why I don't use the pulpit.
Legalism.
Yeah. As Paul writes, he becomes more and more furious until he says, the people who are upsetting you should go all the way and castrate themselves. That's pretty strong stuff. But it's still around today. There's people who argue that we should worship on Sundays because that really is the Sabbath. Or on Saturday, rather. Not on Sunday, but on Saturday, because Saturday is the seventh day of the Sabbath. Yeah, they're right about that. But if you're going to obey that law, you must obey the whole law. And that means you can't wear a cotton shirt and a wool coat. To those who argue that the Old Testament law prohibits eating certain foods, I used to reply, if you're going to obey that law, you must obey the whole law. And that means no more oysters or cheeseburgers. And to those who remind us that the law of Moses states that gay people should be stoned, I say, yeah, but if you're going to obey that one, you've got to obey the whole law, which means you have to stone children who talk back to their parents. Even though we've been set free, Paul says, don't let it become an excuse for letting your physical desires control you. Freedom, or liberty, as Maxie Dann translates the Greek word, is not license. We have been set free from the confines of the law not to follow the ways of the flesh. Oh yeah, we can do that if we want. We're perfectly free to go out and do all those things Paul listed that happen when you follow the flesh. But if we do, we simply sold ourselves to another master. Anybody remember the Toad and Frog books? Toad and Frog. We read it for the kids.
Frog and
Toad. Okay, those are Frog and Toad.
That's why I was wondering.
You might remember this one. Toad baked some cookies. These cookies smell very good, Toad said. And he ate one. And they taste even better, he said. Toad ran to Frog's house. Frog, Frog, cried Toad. taste these cookies that I've made. Frog ate one of the cookies. These are the best cookies I've ever eaten, said Frog. Frog and Toad ate many cookies, one after the other. Said Toad. Toad, said Frog with his mouth full. I think we should stop eating. We'll soon be sick. You're right, said Toad. Let us eat one last cookie and then we'll stop. Frog and Toad ate one last cookie. But there's still many cookies left in the bowl. Frog said Toad, let us eat one very last cookie and then we will stop. We must stop eating, cried Toad as he ate another. Yes, said Frog, reaching for a cookie. We need willpower. What's willpower? Asked Toad. Willpower is trying hard not to do something you really want to do, said Frog. You mean like trying hard not to eat all these cookies? Asked Toad. Right, said Frog. And Frog put the cookies in the box. There, he said, now we won't eat any more cookies. But we can't open the box, said Toad. That is true, said Frog. Frog tied some string around the box. There, he said, now we will not eat any more cookies. But we can cut the string and open the box. That's true, said Frog. Frog got a ladder and he put the box up on a high shelf. There, said Frog, now we will not eat any more cookies. But we can climb up the ladder and take the box down and cut the string and open the box. That's true, said Frog, and he climbed the ladder, took the box down from the shelf, cut the string, opened the box. Frog took the box outside and shouted in a loud voice, "Hey birds, here are cookies!" And the birds came from everywhere and picked up all the cookies in their beak and flew away. Now we have no more cookies, said Toad sadly, not even one. Yes, said Frog, but we have a lot of willpower. You may keep it all, said Toad. I'm going home to bake a cake. Our selfish desires are in exact opposition to the ways of the Spirit. Selfishness leads to promiscuity, moral corruption, idolatry, drunkenness, drug addiction, fighting, obsession, the demand for instant gratification, partying, conflict, hatred, xenophobia, racism, and so on, and on, and on, and on, ad infinitum. To follow our own desires is to enslave ourselves to the evil of the world. Or, as Thomas Huxley put it, a man's worst difficulties begin when he's able to do as he likes. Instead, counsels Paul, let love make you serve one another. While we've been freed from the letter of the law, the spirit of the law, love your neighbor as yourself, still stands. The freedom we've been given is the freedom to love and serve others. To do so without worrying about our own wants and desires. The freedom to love one another is the freedom that brings us such things as joy, peace, patience, faithfulness, self-control, gentleness, just to name a few. We've been set free so that we may be servants to each other. To reach out, not just to those of us here in this congregation, not just to those who call themselves Christians and maybe attend the church next door or one of the other churches around. Not just to those who are citizens of this country or even in this country legally. Not just those who look, speak, think, act, eat, and smell like we do, but to every human being on earth. It is a basic tenet of our faith as Christians that each person is a child of God and entitled to be free and to be treated with dignity. This is echoed in our own Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be so evident that all are created equal, that all are endowed with their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And again, in the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights begins with the statement, all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. as I look around at what's going on politically, I have to remind myself, and I feel compelled to remind you, there is no room in the Christian faith for hatred. There's no room in Christianity for xenophobia, for racism. There is no room for anything but love, respect, and dignity for each and every human being who draws breath on this planet. In a couple of weeks, we're going to celebrate our Declaration of Independence. 240 years ago, as we celebrate our own freedom, let us never forget that with that freedom comes responsibility. Let us celebrate that freedom by freely serving others.